Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 8th part of What If Naruto Became Demon Dragon Rider. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
As she finished the last piece of paper on her desk, Tsunade smiled happily. It went well for her. The day was beautiful. Konoha and its allies had turned the tide of war. She had just finished her paperwork for the day, and she had a great breakfast with Naruto and Kushina. It went well. She smiled and got a cup and her secret stash of sake. But just as she was about to pour the sake into the cup, the small cup broke. Tsunade looked at it for a while, then put the bottle down. She knew that this day was too perfect to be real. When Jiraiya came in through the window, she was about to call Shizune in to give orders. But his usual silly face was gone, and in its place was the serious face of a shinobi veteran she had fought with in the Second Shinobi War. "Tsunade, I've got some bad news," he said, pulling out a small piece of paper. "I got a message from Itachi that the leader of Akatsuki, Pain, is coming to Konoha," he said. Tsunade took the letter and read it. She asked, "How bad is he?" As Jiraiya sat down, he sighed. "You remember those 3 kids I trained in AIM? He's the one with the Rinnegan I told you about. Itachi sent me all the information he could on this guy. He uses 6 bodies to actually attack his opponents, while he controls them from a distance. He's guarded by Konan, a kunoichi skilled in using paper-based ninjutsu. Pain plans to force Naruto to fight him, or he'll level Konoha to bring him out," the Toad Sage said, looking exhausted. Tsunade nodded quietly. She put Itachi's message aside and asked, "Do you know anything about these bodies?" Jiraiya shrugged. "Only what Itachi has been able to gather. He knows the powers for the body he met when he first joined Akatsuki. Apparently, this body uses jutsu capable of controlling gravity itself, allowing him to float and manipulate others around him. From my studies of the Rinnegan, that is one of its powers, as well as the use of all elemental-based jutsu. I have no idea what the other bodies can do, as Itachi hasn't seen them in use yet. He's only seen the one and its powers." Tsunade took a deep breath, shut her eyes, and thought about everything that had happened. She looked up at Jiraiya at last. "So what do we do?" Jiraiya just looked down. He didn't say anything for a while, but then he finally answered. "I don't see much else to do. I know you won't like it, but I think Naruto will have to fight Pain outside the village." Tsunade shot up from her desk. "You're right, I don't like it. Are you crazy? That would be giving them what they want." Jiraiya put his hands in the air. "I don't know what else to say. This man almost killed Itachi with only one of his bodies. If he used all 6, he could probably attack this village by himself. You and I are probably the only shinobi here who can fight him, and even then I don't know if we could win. You know Naruto is stronger than us, and he wouldn't be alone. He'd have his dragon and Hinata with her dragon with him." Tsunade paced around in anger for a few seconds, trying to think of a way to answer. She finally stopped and gave him a mean look. She sighed and sat down. "That doesn't mean I have to like it," she said. "Bring him in," she said softly. "He needs to know." Jiraiya nodded, and as he went out the window, he was gone. Tsunade, on the other hand, did nothing but sigh and lean back in the Hokage's chair. As she went to work, she thought, all good things end. About half an hour later, Jiraiya came back with Naruto, who was looking very serious. "Ero Sennin said we've got a problem?" he asked, still calling Jiraiya by his nickname. He didn't like how anything else sounded, so he stuck with what felt right. Tsunade nodded quietly. "We've heard that the so-called leader of Akatsuki is coming here to capture you. It seems that Itachi and Kisame couldn't handle you on their own." Naruto just nodded. He asked, "What do we know about him?" Then Jiraiya gave him a folder. "Unfortunately, not much. What we know comes from what little our informant has seen for himself and from myths and legends about the man's dujutsu. He has the Rinnegan," Jiraiya said quietly. "According to the stories we've heard, the Rinnegan can control and change the 6 ways that nature can be changed. Before you ask, the 6th way is gravity." As Naruto read the information, he gave a nod. "Your spy is Itachi, right?" he asked, which made them both jump. "What?" It wasn't that hard to figure out. I've studied Itachi's profile, and he was a dedicated shinobi. There's no way he would kill his clan and then join a criminal organization unless he was told to. Am I right? He asked, looking at them. Jiraiya sighed. I almost miss the days when you were goofy, he said quietly as he sat down. Yes, Itachi is my spy in Akatsuki. Since he joined their ranks, he has been sending me information. Naruto also sat down. Then why did he kill his clan? I can't imagine Konoha killing an entire clan just to get one shinobi into a group of S-ranked criminals. Something was up with the Uchiha clan. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya, and Jiraiya gave a small nod. You're right, Naruto. Itachi killed his clan on orders from the elders of Konoha and Danzo, but Sarutobi gave the final order. The Uchiha were planning a coup because they felt their position in the village was threatened by the Kyuubi attack. Many people blamed them for it, since it was proven that the Sharingan can control Kyuubi. Kyuubi laughed inside of Naruto. That's only partly true. Uchiha eyes can block my chakra when I'm sealed in a Jinchuriki, but no one can control me unless they have those damn eyes like Madara did. The regular Sharingan isn't strong enough to do that. As Tsunade talked, Naruto thanked her in his mind. Itachi was a mole in the clan and spied on them for Konoha. In the end, he chose the village over his clan, but in exchange for Sasuke's life, he asked to leave the village. Naruto let out a sigh and closed his eyes. Okay, so what will happen to him after Akatsuki leaves? Will he be able to go back to the village and will the truth be revealed? Tsunade and Jiraiya shrugged. It's not that easy, Naruto. Itachi has a fatal illness. I could easily cure him, but he doesn't want it. He feels he needs to die to make up for killing his clan, even if he was saving Konoha by doing it. Honestly, we'll probably keep the secrets to ourselves. Naruto gave them a look. That's really sad, you know. A man who is so loyal to his village that he is willing to risk everything to help it will always be called a traitor, while the real traitors are praised as martyrs. Both Tsunade and Jiraiya looked guilty when they heard that. We know what Naruto is doing is wrong, but what's the point of making so much trouble if Itachi isn't coming back? Naruto stood and watched them. At least it would give his soul peace in the next life, he said as he got up to leave. I have to go. I need to get ready for a battle. With that, he left, leaving Jiraiya and Tsunade feeling uneasy. Outside, Naruto did nothing but shake softly out of disgust and anger. Disgust that someone who did so much for his village was remembered as a bad guy, and anger that the real bad guys, the Uchiha clan and Hiruzen Sarutobi, were praised. Naruto grunted and couldn't believe he used to look up to the Sandaime Hokage. He shook his head and tried to get rid of those thoughts. Now, he had to worry about the bigger problem, which was getting ready to fight pain. He got to the Namikaze estate quickly, and then he let his dragon into his mind. Onyxia, we need to find Hinata and Azurin. Meet me out back. Since Hinata and Azurin were already in the air, Onyxia gave him a mental okay before taking off. When Naruto got home, his mom and Tayuya were there. Kushina looked up at her son and made a small frown at how serious he looked. She stood up and asked, Naruto, what's wrong? He said, we're in trouble. Please come meet me in the backyard. Kushina and Tayuya just looked at each other and then followed him out the back door. About 10 minutes later, Onyxia landed, followed by Azurin and Hinata. Hinata got off her dragon and walked over. Naruto paused for a moment to think before he spoke. Jiraiya just told me that Pain, the leader of Akatsuki, is coming here. He plans to attack Konoha to try to force me to fight him, and what's worse is that he seems to have the Rinnegan. Kushina and Hinata were both shocked, and Tayuya looked confused. Rinnegan? Isn't that a dujutsu? Hinata gave a quiet nod. It's not just a dujutsu, it's the dujutsu. It was the Kekai Genkai of the Sage of Six Paths himself. It's said that my clan's Byakugan and the Uchiha's Sharingan both came from the Rinnegan. With a grim nod, Naruto agreed with what Hinata said. The Rinnegan gives its user the power to control all 5 types of nature manipulation and a 6th element, gravity. But Pain seems to have taken things a step further. He uses his Rinnegan to control 6 bodies, each with its own unique abilities. Unfortunately, we only know about the abilities of one of these bodies. The other 5 are a mystery. Kushina put his shoulder with his hand. Then what are you going to do, Naruto? He looked at his mother. All I can do is meet him before he gets to Konoha and fight him outside its walls. I can't let our fight put the lives of the people in this village in danger. He moved in front of Tayuya. You can't do this by yourself, Naruto. This guy sounds way stronger than anyone else you've fought. Naruto nodded. Yes, he is. This man beat Itachi and Orochimaru with ease, so you can imagine how strong he is. However, I can't ask anyone else to take this risk. Hinata took the first step. Then what have you been doing for the past 7 months? Training me to just sit on the sidelines? Naruto-kun, we're both dragon riders. I'm not going to let you fight out there alone, and I know Azurin wouldn't either. Naruto gave her a look. Hinata, this is going to be dangerous. This man is different from anyone else you've ever fought. Hinata nodded. I know. But if I can't fight his bodies, maybe I can fight the real him. You said he controls 6 bodies, right? So if I find him and beat him, the threat will be over. Kushina bit her lip. She really did want to come, too. But from what she had heard so far, she knew she couldn't beat this enemy. She wouldn't help Naruto in any way. She gave her son a quiet hug. Please, Sochi, bring her with you. You'll need all the help you can get out there. Naruto looked at her and then gave her a nod before turning to Hinata. I want you to stay back and use your Byakugan. If you can find where the real pain is, go after him. If not, join the fight. Hinata nodded to say that she agreed, and Naruto let out a sigh. For now, we need to rest up and get ready for the battle. Jiraiya says he won't be here for a few more days, so use that time to rest and train, he said. I think this battle will be different from any other we've had so far. Aim. Madara Uchiha looked carefully at the form of Zetsu. He asked the missing Kusa-nin, so, Itachi has finally said where he really stands, has he? Zetsu quickly nodded, and both of his sides and personalities agreed with what they said. Yeah, we saw him speeding east in pursuit of Pain and Konan. The jerk will probably attack them while they're fighting Naruto or something. Madara nodded quietly. I'm sure he'll fight Pain, but I think he's grown close to Konan, so he might try to save her. He thought about this for a while in silence. Perhaps it's time I got Sasuke involved in my plans. Pain's attack on Konoha will be a good distraction while I sneak into their prison and take him, he said. Zetsu, I want you to keep track of the battle and let me know when one side wins or loses. Zetsu bowed and then vanished into the ground. Madara stood up, and behind his mask, his one Sharingan eye lit up. I think it's time for Sasuke to learn the truth about his clan and big brother. 3 days after that, outside of Konoha. Almost everyone seemed to know about the fight that was going to happen. The forest around Konoha was completely quiet. Not a single animal made a noise. There were no sounds of birds or bugs. On the wall were the grim-faced Konoha shinobi who were not fighting Iwa in the front lines. Tsunade had told them about the attacker coming and told all the shinobi who were around to be ready to attack if they had to. Even though she knew it wouldn't help, she wouldn't leave Konoha without protection. She also wouldn't just let Pain take Naruto if the blonde dragon rider lost to him. Naruto waited for his opponent in silence about 100 feet from the walls. He was wearing black armor and had a shield on his back and a sword at his waist. He looked down the road ahead of him without making a sound, looking for his opponent. He knew that it would normally be a bad idea to just stand in the open and wait for a ninja. But if he stayed hidden, Pain might first attack Konoha. He would have liked to avoid that at all costs. Behind him, Onyxia stood and watched as well. But unlike Naruto, she was also using her hearing and sense of smell. She knew that if Pain could really control gravity, she wouldn't be able to fight with Naruto. He could knock her out of the sky, and once she was on the ground, she would be at a disadvantage because she would be surrounded by high-level ninjas. She had no trouble with most Chunin and Junin. Most of them didn't have the right skills or weapons to hurt her. But high-level ninjas like the famous and skilled Junin Kakashi Hatake, the Sannin, or the Kages would have been a big problem for her. And since the man they were about to fight was at least a Sannin or Kage in strength, Onyxia would be at a disadvantage. She would do her best, though, to deal with any surprises that came up and help Naruto in any way she could. Hinata and Azurin were hiding in the forest. As promised, Hinata would stay out of the fight and watch how it went while she looked for the real Pain. If she found him, she would attack him there, hoping to beat him and end the battle. But if Naruto was in trouble before she found him, she and Azurin would go help him. If she could sneak up on them from behind, she might be able to change the battle enough for them to win. Onyxia stopped in the middle of the road and turned her head to look about 300 feet away. she said, "He's here, in Naruto's head." Naruto also turned and looked, but he could barely see a group of people moving. One of the benefits of being a dragon rider was that the senses got better, especially the eyes, which could see almost as well as two eyes. Even though it wasn't as powerful as the Hyuga, it was still very useful. Naruto moved his weight and moved his hand to pull out his sword. As he did this, the figures broke away from the forest and landed on the road about 50 feet from Naruto. There were 6 of them, and each wore an Akatsuki cloak that was black with red clouds on it. Each of them also had the Rinnegan in their eyes, a lot of piercings on their faces, and a headband from the AIM village with a slash through it to show that they weren't ninjas. 5 of the figures had different styles of red hair, and the 6th one had no hair and pale white skin. One of them moved forward slowly, and Naruto did the same, until they were a few yards apart. The body he was looking at had spiked hair like Naruto's and had 3 piercings in his nose and 2 more in his lower lip. Naruto looked at him slowly and then spoke, his voice a little muffled by his helmet. "So. You're Pain, the leader of Akatsuki," he said, his body tight and ready for anything. Pain did nothing but stare at him. "You, Kyuubi Jinchuriki, were thought to be dead because of Orochimaru, but you were hiding the whole time. It might have been better if you hadn't told us you were still alive and just stayed hidden." Naruto squeezed the handle of his sword, which was still in its sheath. "Maybe, but that wouldn't be right since you took my friend and fellow Jinchuriki hostage." Pain did nothing but keep staring at him. "You just put off what was going to happen anyway. Once you're dead and Kyuubi is out, I'll just go after the Ichibi container again and finish what you started." Naruto snarled and pulled out his sword, getting ready to fight. "Over my dead body," he said. "I won't let you go through with your plan, whatever it is." Pain didn't even move when Naruto said this. "Just give up, Naruto Uzumaki. You can't beat me in a fight, and your death is needed for peace to come." Naruto growled. "Peace? How the hell does my death make peace? How does gathering the Biju make peace? The only thing you could use them for is to hurt and kill people." Pain simply nodded. "Right. The combined power of the Biju would give me the weapon I need to force the people of this world to submit. There would be no more war or fighting. Peace would finally be reached. That's not peace, that's slavery. You can't force people to stop being free and being themselves. You can only try to help them understand each other so they won't try to kill each other. What you're proposing would just lead to rebellion after rebellion against you, with people fighting to free themselves from the chains you would put on them. All you would achieve is an endless cycle of death and hatred." Pain did nothing but close his eyes. "You don't know anything. I can see you won't give up. Get ready to face the power of a god," he said, and the other bodies joined him. "Get ready to see the 6 paths of pain." "Diva," he said, pointing to himself. "Animal," he said, pointing to a body with hair in a ponytail. "Human," he said, pointing to a body with long hair. "Hell," he said, pointing to a body with spiky hair and a square jaw. "Asura," he said, pointing to the bald and pale body. "And Ghost." Slowly, Naruto took his shield off his back and put it on his arm. "Let's do this then," he said in a whisper. Almost as soon as he said those words, the ghost and human bodies rushed forward to do taijutsu with him. Both of them were very different. The ghost body seemed to be more of a defensive stance, meant to deflect and soak up attacks. The human body was stronger and could do some tricks. Naruto blocked the human body's kick with his shield and stabbed at him, but the ghost body dodged by jabbing at the side of Naruto's sword. Naruto went for the ghost body with a backhand slash. The ghost body moved back, giving the human body a chance to hit Naruto in the middle. Even though Naruto raised his shield, the punch still pushed it and his left side back a little. Naruto let out a grunt of surprise at how hard the blow hit, and then he got back into his position. He stopped for a moment, surprised that the human and ghost bodies weren't attacking. Then, his eyes grew wide when he saw that the Diva Pain was gone. Onyxia told him in his mind, "Above you." Naruto looked up and saw the Diva Pain coming down towards him while making the ox hand sign. As he did this, it looked like water just gathered in the air around him and shot at Naruto in the shape of a huge dragon. Naruto cursed as he jumped back and sent chakra to his sword. As he landed, the dragon shot at him, and Naruto cut down with his sword. The dragon was cut in half by the chakra in his sword, which made water shoot out on both sides of Naruto. He slowly looked up at Pain's 6 bodies, which had come back together. He asked, "Is that it?" As his eyes turned red and he started to use a small amount of Kyuubi's chakra to go into what he called his Demon Rider mode. The chakra made him faster and more agile, and it also made his attacks stronger. Except for the Asura body, which raised its arm, the pains didn't react. Suddenly, the forearm broke off and shot straight for Naruto, almost like a missile. Behind him, the body of the animal was making hand signs. Naruto turned away from the fist and watched it return to the Asura's body. Okay. We have two bodies that can do taijutsu, and the one with the bald head can throw its arm like a missile. The Diva one knows water ninjutsu and those special Rinnegan techniques. That just leaves the animal and hell bodies to find out what they do, he thought as he stabbed his sword into the ground and slung his shield over his back. He quickly ran through the hand signs for a ninjutsu, wind style, typhoon cutter. As the attack came, the ghost pain moved to the front of the group and raised its arms. Just as the attack hit, it started to fade away as the ghost pain opened its mouth and almost sucked the attack into itself. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. Okay, so the ghost pain can also absorb ninjutsu. Well, let's see how he handles this. Before Naruto could make his next move, there was a huge explosion of smoke from the animal pain. In its place stood a very large, mean-looking dog summons with Rinnegan eyes and piercings. As Naruto moved back, he muttered, "Oh, great. I'm not a dog person at all," he said as the dog grew and bared its teeth as it moved toward him. Just as the dog was about to attack, there was a roar and a black blur hit it. Onyxia slammed it into the tree line, flattening dozens of trees as she bit into the creature's neck and tore at its flank with her claws. The dog roared and tried to get at her with its own claws. Suddenly, a second one appeared on its body and tried to bite at Onyxia's neck. Its teeth weren't strong enough. Naruto turned back to the pains and said, "Okay. Got to get rid of the ghost and animal ones first, I think," he said as he decided to try a different strategy. As the human and ghost bodies rushed him again, he cast a spell. Orum's Abr Brins Gr. Fire Serpents. Black flames started to form around his body, and as they moved toward the two charging bodies, they changed into snakes and opened their mouths, ready to sink their fiery fangs into their target's flesh. The ghost pain moved to absorb them, but instead, 3 of the serpents slammed into him, one right in his mouth, and exploded. Within seconds, the ghost pain was completely engulfed in black flames, and since the human pain couldn't absorb the attack, he too was hit and burst into flames. Both bodies fell to the ground, still burning. Naruto grinned as he burst through the flames and ran towards the 4 remaining peens. However, as he did so, the Asura pain stepped forward, opening the top of its head. Naruto blinked, seeing a machine in place of a brain, before it lit up and shot a beam of energy at him. He raised his shield, ducking as he did so. The beam cut through the top of his shield, destroying it. Onyxia, on the other hand, was having some trouble. Every time she hit the dog, it seemed to grow a new head. Even though the dog's heads couldn't move much, having so many of them made it hard to attack. She jumped back as multiple jaws snapped at her. When she had enough, she breathed flames at it. The super hot dragon flames roasted the dog, making it scream in pain before it vanished. Onyxia laughed, only to roar in pain as a large ox-like creature with Rinnegan eyes and piercings slammed into her side. It snorted and pawed the ground with one of its hooves. Naruto had just gotten back on his feet when the Asura pain made its next move. It pulled its other forearm away from its body, revealing a row of small cylinder-like objects attached to a long metal coil. Suddenly, flames shot up from the bottom of each cylinder and headed toward Naruto. "Oh, give me a break, man!" Naruto yelled, raising his hands. As the missiles exploded around him, a cloud of flames and smoke surrounded him. Maximum security prison in Konoha. Sasuke grunted as he kept doing push-ups in his cell. He didn't have much to do besides try to stay in shape. Since he was a high-ranking criminal, they didn't even let him out to do manual labor like the other prisoners. The rest of his team, except for Karen, was the same because of their unique personalities. He groaned as he got up and went to his bed to do sit-ups. Just as he was about to start, he heard a grunt and a thud outside. He stood up just as the door opened and a figure stood in the doorway. Sasuke blinked, but he couldn't see the person's face because of the shadows. "Who are you? What's happening?" he demanded, getting up. "Making demands while you're in jail?" The figure seemed to laugh. "Not a smart move, Sasuke Uchiha," the figure said before moving away. "But to answer your question, I'm here to set you free and help you get revenge. Slowly, Sasuke walked out of his cell and saw the figure. He wasn't much taller than Sasuke and had short, spiky hair. He wore an orange spiral mask with one eye hole over his face, but it was the black cloak with red clouds that caught Sasuke's attention. You're an Akatsuki member. Where is my sibling? Sasuke said as he took a taijutsu stance, but the figure just shrugged. Do you need to know that right now? Or do you want to get away so that you can find him later and kill him? He asked, then turned around and said, if it's the second one, come with me. When the figure walked away, Sasuke blinked and then followed. Who are you? Behind his mask, the figure grinned. Who am I? I'm Madara Uchiha. Outside Konoha. The smoke from the multiple explosions cleared, revealing a panting but unharmed Naruto. He slowly let go of his hands, lowering the magical barrier he had put up to stop the attack. Hinata watched the battle from a distance, biting her lip in worry. Naruto seemed to be holding his own, but she could see that the fight was already hurting him. She used her Byakugan to try to find the real Pain and his partner, Konan. She blinked when she saw a large chakra signature a long way from the actual battle. It wasn't a person, but it looked like a tree made of chakra. Hinata bit her lip, trying to decide if she should attack or not. The decision was made for her when she saw a second, smaller chakra signature heading straight for the tree. At the same time, she saw something that Naruto didn't see about the dead ghost Pain and the hell Pain. She decided to attack and ran towards the battle. Back at the battle, Naruto had redrawn his sword, when the dog the animal Pain had summoned crashed into the clearing. The dog had multiple heads now, but it was bloodied and at least 2 of its legs were broken. The ox summon soon followed, its fur singed and on fire in some places, and its horns broken. A bloodied Onyxia limped out after them, roaring as she unleashed her flames upon them both, lighting them both on fire. The 2 creatures roared in pain and then vanished in a big cloud of smoke. The animal Pain moved quickly to call up another creature, this time a huge bird with a drill-like beak, and jumped on its back as it flew away. Onyxia turned around with a growl of anger and narrowed her golden eyes. With a roar, she took off into the air after it. Naruto turned around and was about to rush the Pains when he felt movement to his side. He quickly dodged, and the fist that was aimed at his head hit his right shoulder instead, knocking him off balance. He blinked when he saw the ghost Pain, who didn't seem to be hurt. Naruto thought, how the hell did that happen? I burned him alive. Before he saw the hell Pain going to the animal Pain, who was still lying on the ground. The ghost Pain was between Naruto and the animal Pain, so he couldn't stop him from turning into a giant Enma head and eating the animal Pain. However, just as the giant head was about to eat the animal Pain, a blue blur shot out of the trees and drove a curve. As Naruto moved closer to Hinata, the ghost Pain jumped away, joining the other Pain. So, you've decided to help me, huh? He asked her as he softly puffed. Hinata nodded as she held her shield and sword. You seem to need more help. Also, I think Pain is being taken care of by someone else, she said quietly, ready to fight. The Diva Pain's eyes got a little narrower as he said, so, you have help, but it won't help you in the end. Your power is nothing compared to mine. Banshu Tensai, he said quietly as he slowly raised his right hand towards Hinata. Hinata was pulled toward him all of a sudden, and the Asura Pain showed a long metal tail that ended in a point. It was pointed directly at Hinata. But before the tail could hit her, a slope of earth showed up in front of her. She slammed her feet on it and used the momentum to run up and jump over the Asura Pain. She landed behind it and swung her sword back. Her sword, which was made with magic and dragon flames to make it stronger, cut through the Asura Pain's tail as a rock spear shot out of the ramp and pierced its chest. As Hinata stood up, it fell over, and Naruto came up next to her and let go of the spell he had used to move the rocks. When the earth ramp fell, the realm of the now dead Asuras fell over, leaving only the Diva and Ghost Pains. Onyxia was sweating as she fought the animal Pain and its summon in the sky. She was tired from the fights she had been in before, and the wounds on her wings and body had taken away even more of her strength. The bird she was fighting was quick and nimble. It was making another pass, trying to hit her with its drill-like beak. Onyxia was able to move to one side, but the beak still tore some of the membrane off of her right wing. She yelled out in pain and started to fall as the wing broke. She just barely got it open again, but she was still slowly going down. The bird then flew by again, this time with its beak aimed at her back. Onyxia tried to get away, but her wing broke again, which made her fall even farther. She shut her eyes and braced herself for the blow. As a roar filled the sky, it never came. The bird was hit from the side, sending it flying as Azurin charged into the fight with his eyes burning with anger. "You're not touching her." The bird tried to fly away, but Azurin crashed into its back. His jaws closed around the bird, pain, and tore it in half. His front claws grabbed its wings and ripped them off. The crippled summon fell to the ground in a bloody shower of feathers and blood. Onyxia landed slowly and then fell down, panting in pain and weariness. Azurin landed next to her and gave her a gentle kiss as he worriedly grumbled. She opened one eye slowly and looked at him. Thank you." She gasped as she fell asleep. Azurin just curled up next to her and put his wings and body over her to protect her. Naruto and Hinata went up against the last two Pains. The bodies of Diva and Ghost Pain stood next to each other and watched their opponents in silence. He gave them a quick look. The Diva one is the real threat. He can control gravity, which makes it hard to hit him or get away from him. The Ghost one, on the other hand, can absorb any chakra-based attacks we send, so we'll need to get rid of him first before trying to just beat the Diva one. Hinata gave a soft nod. She asked softly, "But how do we get to the Ghost one?" Naruto bit his lip. "I don't know. We need to hit him hard and fast. I guess I'll have to go back to the basics." With that, Naruto made 5 clones that were all holding swords and ready to fight. Naruto gave a quiet nod. "They'll go in first to try to get the Diva realm to use one of his techniques, and we'll attack after them. Go." With that order, the 5 clones charged in and tried to attack both the Diva and Ghost Pains at the same time. Each person was ready to strike with their sword. As he watched them, the Diva Pain just held up both hands. Shinra Tensai. With that command, the clones were thrown black, and when they hit the ground, they exploded into smoke. But Naruto and Hinata came out of the smoke with their swords ready. The Diva Pain took a metal rod out of his right sleeve and used it to block Naruto's sword attack. Hinata's downward slash just missed the Ghost Pain, who took a step back. But then she jumped at him and hit him with a Juken with her left hand. The Ghost Pain just took in the chakra from the hit and blinked when it felt something else. It slowly looked down as Hinata pulled her left arm back, revealing a bloody blade under her left forearm and hand. 1. Hinata took a step back as the Ghost Pain fell to its knees and then rolled onto its side. Pulses of blood came out of its neck as its still beating heart pumped blood through the body and out of the wound. Naruto grinned. "And then there was one," he said as he looked at Pain's dead body. Hinata held onto her sword and put her shield back on her left arm as she moved slowly to the side of the Diva Pain. For the first time, the Diva Pain showed an emotion. Its face showed a small hint of anger and frustration as it held the chakra metal rod in its right hand like a sword. "Why do you two keep fighting? You're stopping the world from having a real chance at peace." Naruto gave a head shake. He said quietly, "No, Pain. We're trying to stop you from taking the cycle of hatred to a new level. You should stop." The Diva's body did nothing but hold the chakra rod up. He just said, "No," and then he attacked. Naruto used Vinder to block the attack, then pushed back and hit. Hinata's sword, Thringra, Rain, was about to hit Diva Pain when he took a step back. The blade got its name because when Hinata took it out of its sheath on the day it was finished, it started to rain. Hinata then hit the Diva Pain with her shield, but the Diva Pain jumped over her and hit her in the back. Naruto dodged for her and leaned over so Hinata could roll over his back and slash at the Diva Pain, cutting through his cloak. The one of Pain's bodies that was still alive took a step back as part of his cloak fell off, revealing the upper left side of his body. He looked at them both for a while, then shook his head. "I've had enough of this," he said simply as he stuck the rod into the ground and put both hands out to them. Chibaku Tensai. Suddenly, a dark ball of energy shot out of his hands and hovered close to them. They both looked at it, and then they were shocked when the ground around them started to break up. They were pulled up along with the ground they were standing on. Before they could do anything, the ground they were standing on, the sphere, and the other pieces of uprooted ground floated into the air. Pieces of earth, including their own, started to gather around the dark sphere. Soon, they were trapped inside a giant sphere of earth that was floating in the air. The Diva Pain stood there and looked up at the huge sphere that was floating in the air. He just said, "This is what happens to people who dare to try to match the power of a god." Inside the ball, Naruto was so tired that he could barely move. Hinata. You okay? Hinata, who was close by, gave a painful nod. Yes, Naruto. What should we do? Naruto let out a soft grunt. I have an idea, but it's dangerous. Can Azuren catch us in time? Hinata blinked. I'll get in touch with him. What will you do? The blonde dragon rider grunted and moved his right hand a little. Either save us or kill us, he said, closing his eyes and reaching for his magic. When the shaking and rumbling started, the Diva Pain was getting ready to move the big ball of earth. The Rinnegan user narrowed his eyes, and then they grew wider as a big chunk just blew out in a cloud of dust, dirt, and mud. And 2 people in armor fell from this cloud. Hinata took a deep breath of fresh air and then looked over at Naruto. She could see that he was really moving, so she reached out and took his hand. Hurry, Azuren. Don't worry about it, I've got you, her dragon's voice kept saying in her head, just before her dragon showed up nearby. He moved slowly away from them, letting Hinata land and pull Naruto up with her. Azuren flapped his wings, which made him slow down and stop. Diva Pain's eyes narrowed and he slowly raised his hands, getting ready to pull the dragon out of the sky. But then he just stopped moving. The reason was easy to understand. With the real Pain and Conan hiding in a big paper tree, it was hard for him to concentrate on his diva body. This was done by sending black flames through the paper walls of the tree. When the flames went out, Itachi was able to get inside. He was no longer wearing the Akatsuki cloak and wide-brimmed straw hat. Now he was wearing the Anbu armor he used to wear in Konoha. As he looked at Pain, his Mangekyo Sharingan eyes slowly turned back into normal Sharingan eyes. Conan just stood there and stared in shock and disbelief. She was shocked and asked, Itachi, what are you doing here? Itachi's eyes were sad as he looked at her. He said, I'm sorry, Conan, in a soft voice. I haven't told you the whole truth. Nagato gave Itachi a hard look. So, you've turned traitor, Itachi? He asked as he coughed a bit inside the machine he was forced to live in and move around in. His almost skeletal body was also pierced in places that were linked to the machine and let him control it with his thoughts. He looked at Nagato. It's hard to betray an organization I never really believed in. The only person I've betrayed here is Conan, he said without emotion, trying not to look at the amber eyes that were filled with pain and betrayal. Nagato gave a growl. He said, it doesn't matter. You betrayed the Akatsuki, so you will die. Using his gravity control, he fired several metal rods from his chakra at Itachi. Itachi pulled out his sword and blocked each of them as they got close enough. Then he threw a kunai at Pain. Pain stopped it with his gravity control, but his eyes grew wide as a second one, hiding in the shadow of the first, slipped by and headed straight for him. As the kunai went into a body, there was a cry of pain and a splash of blood. Itachi's eyes got very big and scared. Conan's second kunai was stuck in his chest. Still, Conan hadn't done anything to stop the kunai. Pain had pulled her there so that she would take the attack he couldn't stop. Conan slowly looked down at the kunai that was stuck in her chest. Then she got down on her knees and tried to pull it out as weakly as she could. Itachi could only watch in shock as Nagato walked over her dead body. Don't look so surprised, Itachi. An angel's job is to protect her god, even if it means giving up her own life, he said, not caring what he had just done. Itachi put his head down and shook. He whispered, you would use your friend or family to save your own life. Itachi yelled, I wonder now if Yahiko really made you stab him, or if you did it yourself and made Conan think you did. You've betrayed the very ideals you once fought for. He remembered what Conan had told him about her past and her friendship with Yahiko and Nagato. At that moment, something unusual happened. Itachi, who was usually quiet, vanished and was replaced by a vengeful warrior. He yelled, letting out all of his pain and anger as he suddenly appeared in front of Nagato and smashed his right fist into the Rinnegan user's face. Nagato and his chair were both knocked back by the force of the blow. Then, Itachi flew through the hand signs for Uchiha's signature jutsu. Fire method, Phoenix Bomb Jutsu. A rapid fire series of balls came out of his mouth and hit Nagato, barely being stopped by his control over gravity. But Itachi, holding a ninjutsu, ripped through the smoke. He cut at Nagato, but she wasn't quite quick enough to fully avoid the attack. The blow broke through the chair's chakra receivers, cutting Pain off from his diva body and causing it to collapse on the battlefield. Itachi then gave Pain a roundhouse kick, which knocked him over. He then stuck his blade through the chair and Nagato, pinning him to the ground. The Uchiha clan destroyer had one hand on Nagato's head to keep him from moving and the other hand on a kunai. Itachi cut out Nagato's eyes with one quick cut, making him scream in pain. Itachi stood there and growled. "I guess you're not a god. Otherwise, you wouldn't be bleeding," he whispered before his eyes changed into Mangekyo form. Amaterasu. Nagato screamed in pain as the black flames shot out and burned him up. He kept screaming until he finally died. The fire burned him to death and left nothing behind, not even ash. The man known as Pain would be gone except for a burn mark. Itachi stopped his Amaterasu and ran to Konan's side as he turned to face her. When he saw that her eyes were closed and her face was pale, he quickly checked to see if she had a pulse. When he found one that was weak, he picked her up and ran toward Konoha. He no longer cared about what would happen. As he ran toward his old home, all he cared about was saving the woman he was holding. Konoha Hospital. After the fight between Pain and the Demon Dragon Rider, there was a lot going on at the hospital. Most of the medical ninjas were outside, trying to help Onyxia get better, while Hinata and Azurin kept an eye on them. The second one seemed to look out for the black female dragon a lot more than usual. Naruto was in another room, where Ambu guards kept out people who weren't supposed to be there. Sakura was told to heal his minor wounds and make him feel better, since all he was hurting from was something like chakra exhaustion. Naruto was lying in bed with nothing on but a hospital gown. Shizune was in another room cutting up the bodies that Pain had used but were still whole. The top half of the animal Pain was in Azurin's digestive system, and the real Pain, which was called Nagato, had been burned away. The bodies of the other people were still in good enough shape to be looked at. In the last room, Tsunade was trying to heal the kunoichi with blue hair that Itachi had brought in. She was surprised to see the man, who used to be captain of the Anbu and killed members of the Uchiha clan. At the moment, two of her most skilled and well-trained Anbu were holding him in a safe room until she decided what to do with him. Some of the guards who were hurt while watching over Sasuke Uchiha's prison cell were in a few other rooms. Shortly after the battle, they were found, but Sasuke was not in his cell. None of his teammates, though, had been let go. As she washed up from the surgery she had been doing, Tsunade slowly moved away from Konan. She had saved her, so Konan was just out of it now. She made two Anbu appear by snapping her fingers. "Take her to the prison wing and keep an eye on her. No one but me or my apprentices should see her." The two Anbu nodded and walked with the nurses who were wheeling Konan to the place where she would stay while she got better. Tsunade, on the other hand, went to the second floor room where Itachi was being held. She gave a nod to the two Anbu guarding the door before going in. Itachi was tied down to a chair with chains that had seals on them that blocked chakra. As soon as Tsunade walked in, he quickly looked up. Tsunade raised a hand before he could say anything. She said, "She'll be fine, but what we do with her when she wakes up is a different story." Itachi nodded. "I get it, but she hasn't done anything against Konoha itself. Even though she was a member of the Akatsuki organization, she hasn't done anything against Konoha," he said. Tsunade cocked her head. She asked with her arms crossed, "You're quick to defend her, aren't you?" Itachi did nothing but look back at her. "Over the past 6 months, she's become a close friend. Wouldn't you do the same?" he asked. She just gave a soft smirk. "That's true, but why did you leave Akatsuki and come back? We could have still used your position as a spy in Akatsuki." Itachi gave a headshake. "No, you couldn't. As you already know from my reports over the past year or so, after Kakuzu and Hidan died, Madara Uchiha emerged as the real leader of Akatsuki. He knew from the start what I was doing in Akatsuki, but he also knew that I wasn't actively working against his plans. I was just sending information to Jiraiya. He also knew that I had tried to steer Jiraiya away from his plans. However, I knew that if Pain failed to get Naruto, he would move his operation. He would go underground, trying to stay anonymous as he planned his next steps. If that happened, he would never have let me continue my work. So, I felt my job as a spy in Akatsuki was over, so I came here to protect the only person I cared about," Itachi said as he looked at Tsunade. Tsunade looked at him and then sighed softly. "I guess I can't blame you all the way there," she said. "But now what?" she asked. Itachi smiled in a sad way. "Nothing, Hokage-sama. Nothing, he told her when she looked at him with a questioning look. I'm sick and almost blind, and there's nothing you can do for me, Hokage-sama. My time will be up in a few months. I had hoped Sasuke would kill me, but that's not likely to happen now, is it? Tsunade blinked, then used a jutsu to find out what was wrong with Itachi. She made her eyes a little narrower and then pulled her hand away. I see. For now, Itachi, you'll stay here. I'll have Jiraiya replace these shackles with regular chakra-draining seals, so you can move around. I'll decide your fate later, after talking about it with some of my advisors. Itachi just nodded, and she turned around and walked away. As soon as the door shut, she went to the medical archives. I know I've seen that illness before, she said to herself. If she was right about what she thought, Itachi might not be as doomed as he thought. Not known where. Zetsu, an Akatsuki member, took Sasuke to a room, where he paced the floor in a hurry. Madara had brought him here, changed his clothes, fed him, and given him an Akatsuki cloak. Then he had to go do something else, but he promised to come back and tell him the truth about Itachi and Konoha, as well as why Itachi was still helping Konoha by telling Jiraiya things. When the door opened and the masked person walked in, Sasuke turned around. He closed the door and then looked at Sasuke. You've been waiting for me, he said plainly. You could have gone to the gym or done something more useful. I don't care about that now. I want to know about my brother. I want the truth. Sasuke almost shouted, his Sharingan flashing. Killer intent hit him for a second and sent him to his knees. Then it went away. Madara just laughed under his mask. Don't tell me what to do, boy. I'll tell you when I'm ready, not when you tell me to. Madara was leaning against a wall as Sasuke slowly stood up. He said, I guess I've kept you waiting long enough. The truth is that your brother never turned against Konoha. When he killed everyone in your clan, he did so because the Hokage told him to. Sasuke's eyes got very big. What? Why? Madara sighed. To understand that, we need to think back to my fight with the Shodai Hokage. I'm sure you know all about how I betrayed the village and fought Hashirama Senju, and especially how I called the Kyuubi to fight him. That's the part you want to remember. Madara went on as Sasuke slowly nodded his head. Everyone thought the Shodai beat me. In reality, the battle was a draw, and I left. The Kyuubi also went away. But the fact that I was able to control the Kyuubi would not be forgotten, and it would come back into the light many years later. Sasuke's eyes got bigger, which made Madara nod. Yes, I think you're starting to get it. The fact that I could control the Kyuubi made the higher-ups of Konoha very suspicious of the Uchiha clan. They hadn't lost many shinobi during the fighting against the Kyuubi, mostly because most of them were on missions. Paranoid minds might think that was a plan to weaken Konoha's power and fill most of its shinobi ranks with Uchiha, but they were wrong. But this didn't stop rumors from spreading that the Uchiha could control the Kyuubi with their eyes. Soon, the Uchiha clan was treated with mistrust. Once that happened, the Uchiha turned the paranoid fears of the Konoha elders and the old warhawk Danzo into reality. At this point, Sasuke had closed his eyes and turned away as silent tears fell. Why did he ask to spare me? He asked in a whisper. Sasuke, it's simple. Your brother loves you, so he couldn't kill you. He also thought that if you killed him, you could restore the honor of the Uchiha clan. He left you alive so you could do that, Madara said. When Sasuke opened his eyes, his Sharingan almost seemed to light up. No. He didn't steal the honor of our clan. Konoha did. He yelled, clenching his fists and smashing them into a table, breaking it. I will restore the honor of my clan by killing the people who really caused it to fall apart. I will burn the village around their bodies to the ground. Madara almost looked like he agreed. And what about your brother? My spy told me he's back in Konoha now. If he foolishly defends the village, will you kill him too? Sasuke gave him a hard look. No, I'm sure that if I can talk to him, Itachi will realize the truth and join us. Or maybe his mind isn't entirely his own. What if Konoha did something to him to make him be loyal? Sasuke shouted, his anger making him come up with crazy ideas that could explain what had happened. Madara did nothing but watch him in silence. It doesn't matter, Sasuke. What matters is what you plan to do about Konoha. Will you help me put an end to the time of the 5 great shinobi villages? Sasuke looked at him and then smiled a little crazy. I will get revenge for my clan. Behind his mask, Madara grinned. Good. Good. He said, laughing a bit. Then come, because we have a lot to talk about. Sasuke grabbed the Akatsuki cloak and put it on as he followed Madara to his new destiny. Konoha Hospital. Naruto gave a soft groan as he started to move around in his bed. His eyes began to slowly open. He grunted as the light from the white walls of the hospital room almost made him lose his eyesight. After a few blinks to let his eyes adjust, he was finally able to see what was going on around him. Sunlight was coming in through the window and lighting up the room for two people. It also lit up the person who was sitting next to his bed, with her head on the bed. When he saw Hinata, he blinked and then gave a small smile. He didn't understand why, but seeing her there warmed his heart. He pushed those feelings aside and looked around. His mom was sleeping in a chair next to Hinata, her long red hair falling over the back of the chair as she lay back. And Tayuya was curled up and fast asleep on the other bed. Naruto gave them a soft smile and then slowly used his mind to reach out and find his dragon. Onyxia? Are you listening? There was no answer, which made Naruto blink and start to feel worried. He called out to her again, a little louder this time, but she answered him from somewhere else. Kyuubi yawned as Naruto's calls for Onyxia kept waking her up. She's sleeping. She just had a lot of surgery and needs to rest, she said. Naruto got even more scared. Is she okay? What went on? He demanded. Before he answered, he thought about nothing for a few moments, except for the sounds of bones and joints cracking as Kyuubi stretched. She got hurt pretty badly fighting Pain's animal summons, but Azurin saved her and got medical ninjas to her as soon as possible. Hinata helped heal her when she wasn't with you and your family. Onyxia will be fine, but it will take a few weeks for her wounds to heal completely. Naruto sighed and leaned back against his pillows with a sense of relief. They had made it through the battle without getting hurt. He closed his eyes and let the sweet relief wash away all of his worries. But he opened his eyes when he heard moving in the room. He closed his eyes when he saw Hinata sit up, stretch, and yawn. He gave her a smile. Morning, he said, and the sound of his voice made her stop yawning. Her eyes popped open and went straight to him. She almost yelled, "You're awake," as she hugged him. Because of this, Tayuya and Kushina also woke up. Naruto didn't notice, though, because all he felt was Hinata's hug. When he felt her hug him, for some reason, it made him feel warm and happy. He had a slight blush as he hugged her back, which made her blush, and then they quickly broke apart. Hinata stuttered, Well, it's good to see you awake, which made her blush. Naruto just smiled softly and let out a oof when Kushina hugged him tight. Kushina almost broke down in tears as she hugged Naruto and said, "Oh, my baby, you scared me. When Hinata rushed you to the hospital, I thought you were hurt." He gave her a pat on the back. He said softly, "It's okay, Mom. I'm fine." Kushina just held on to him for a few more seconds before letting go and hitting him in the head. "You scared me to death. If I could, I would ground you for a year, young man," she said. This made Naruto see a small part of the angry Kunoichi who was known as the hot-blooded habanero. As she messed with his hair, Tayuya just smiled. She told her mother, "Don't be so hard on him, at least he only had chakra exhaustion." Naruto muttered quietly as he fixed his hair. "When you're done making fun of me and hurting me physically, can you tell me when I can leave? I want to go help Onyxia get better." Kushina put her arms in a cross. "Don't do anything like that until you're fully better. Onyxia is in good hands, hear me?" Naruto sighed and stretched out. Fine. Can I at least get some ramen?" he asked, almost begging. Kushina smiled. "Okay, I'll go get some," she told him with a smile. "Come on, Tayuya." Hinata probably wanted to talk to Naruto alone. Tayuya shrugged. "I was going to meet Shino anyway," she said as she left. She still had a slight limp, but it was hard to tell now. As the two of them walked away, Naruto caught a glimpse of Hinata's soft smile. "I'm glad you're okay," she told him. Naruto nodded. "Yeah, me too. What happened after I helped us get out of the big rock ball?" Hinata's head tilted as she thought, "Well, Azurin caught us after you passed out. I thought that Pain's body was going to attack us, but it just stopped. Then he finally fell down. I found out that because of Itachi." He fought the real Pain and the other man who was with him, and he killed Pain. He is being kept somewhere that can't be said. And Onyxia? Naruto asked quietly. Hinata moved closer to him. The last time he talked to her, Azurin said she was fine. She is still very weak, though. Kyuubi told me. Naruto bit his lip. He said, I'm glad she's okay. She gave a soft nod and asked, so what happens now? She queried. Naruto sighed and said, now. We rest, get back together, and wait for our next orders. I'll be gone for a few days, and Onyxia will probably be gone even longer. So, for now, just pitch in where you can, he said with a smile. Hinata nodded and stood up. I guess I should let you rest, she said. I'll stop by tomorrow, if you want. Maybe bring some books with you, Naruto said with a nod. I'm not having fun here. Hinata just nodded and smiled as she walked toward the door, but Naruto's voice stopped her before she could open it. Hinata? Uma. Thanks. For getting me out of trouble. More than once, he said, a little red in the face. Hinata smiled back and told him, thank you. When I get out, would you maybe like to get some dinner? Just you and me? He asked, but as soon as he did, he realized what his words could mean and his eyes got big. Hinata's eyes lit up, and her blush showed that she was thinking the same thing. And not like a date, but just. Well, two friends hanging out, Naruto said quickly. Hinata just looked at him for a moment before nodding. I'd like that, she said, and then she left. Naruto leaned back against his pillow and laughed to himself, smooth, Romeo. Stuff it, furry, he growled. Why don't you just ask her out on a real date? Kyuubi just laughed more. Since you spent the night in bed with her, I know you've been thinking about it. Naruto sighed. I don't because we're in the middle of a war, and I don't want to start anything until the war is over. Also, how do you know if she still likes me? Well, if that blush is any indication, I'd say she does. But do what you want. With that, Kyuubi left his mind, and Naruto let out a sigh. He muttered, stupid fox, because she had made him think. He couldn't say he didn't like the idea of asking Hinata out on a date though. He sighed again and rolled over in bed, closing his eyes while he waited for his ramen, trying not to think about Hinata. 2 days later, in the prisoner wing of Konoha's hospital. It had been 4 days since her life had been shattered again. Konan just looked up at the ceiling of the locked hospital room she was in. She had woken up 2 days ago and spent the first 2 minutes trying to figure out where she was. Then everything came crashing down on her. Coming to Konoha with pain and waiting for the battle to end. Itachi showing up and learning that he was a traitor to Akatsuki. Pain. The man who used to be Nagato, a man she thought of as a brother, using her to protect himself from an attack. He almost killed her to save his own skin. After realizing what had happened, Konan had cried for hours, screamed, yelled, and then gone quiet. Now, she just stared at the ceiling. It was the same color as it was 2 days ago. The room was all white, and there wasn't even a picture to break up the monotony or add some color. There was a window, but it was barred, and the window itself was a piece of reinforced glass stuck into the opening in the building. Konan closed her eyes and laid on her side. So far, the only people who had come to see her were a teenage kunoichi medic with pink hair, and the Anbu who brought her food. She wished they would hurry up and question her, or something. Anything to take her mind off of her broken life. Itachi looked at Konan and said, I'm glad to see you're awake. What can I do for you, Uchiha? Asked Konan, whose eyes hardened as she turned over and turned her back on him. She asked in a cold voice. Itachi looked down and said, I was hoping I could tell you why I did what I did. Uchiha, there is nothing to explain. You became a member of Akatsuki to spy for Konoha. Your attempts to be friends with me were just a trick to try to get more information from me than you were getting before. I was a good source of information because I worked closely with Pain, she said in a voice as cold as ice. What he couldn't see were the small tears that were starting to form at the corners of her eyes. Itachi looked up at her and told her, that's not right, Konan-san. Uchiha, you don't have to lie. After all, you are a shinobi. Shinobi do things like this. They use any way possible to get the information they want. So it doesn't matter why you're here. Please let me rest before the interrogators come, she said in a tone that left no room for debate. Itachi just looked at her and nodded numbly to Shizune. She bit her lip, wanting to comfort him but also remembering him as a member of Akatsuki and the killer of the Uchiha clan, even though she didn't know the whole story behind those two parts of his life. She knocked on the door, and the Anbu let them both out. Itachi looked at Shizune as another pair of Anbu came to take him away. "Thank you, Shizune-san, for at least letting me see her," he said as they led him to the council chambers. Shizune watched him go, sighed, and glanced at the closed door as she left. Itachi, meanwhile, was being led to the council chambers. Tsunade had decided that the truth about what happened with the Uchiha would be told to the whole council, and then they would decide what to do. Itachi would tell the council the truth, backed up by the few documents left over from the Uchiha events and Jiraiya's own testimony. Itachi was brought to the Hokage's tower by two Anbu agents in a stealthy way. They used routes through the village that the shinobi knew to take when they needed to move quietly. 10 minutes after leaving the hospital, Itachi was standing in front of the council. Many were muttering dark things and looking at Itachi with dark eyes. They thought that it was all Itachi's fault that there were no more Uchiha in Konoha because he had killed them all and forced the only one left, his own younger brother, to join Orochimaru in his quest for power. Tsunade saw this and felt a small amount of anger. At least after this meeting, they would know the truth and hopefully praise Itachi or at least realize he wasn't a bad guy. She was worried about the clans, though. What was about to be revealed could cause tension among them and make them think Konoha could turn on them, even though Tsunade knew she would never let that happen. Once everyone was there, she said, "This meeting has been called to deal with the S-ranked criminal, Itachi Uchiha." Itachi Uchiha was responsible for killing almost his whole clan, and he also joined a group of S-ranked criminals who are a big threat to the whole shinobi world. He's only been in our care for a short time. She sighed and pulled out a file. However, some facts about Itachi Uchiha's actions on the Night Question and over the past 10 years have been kept from the public and from this council. What has been kept from the public is that Itachi Uchiha worked as a spy and double agent for Konoha, she said as she opened the file. The Uchiha clan was planning to take over Konoha's government. They did this because they were worried about their safety and standing in the village because of false rumors that were going around Konoha from an unknown source. These rumors linked the Uchiha clan to the October 10th attack by the Kyuubi, which happened more than 18 years ago. One of the regular people stood up and said, "Hokage-sama, you must be kidding." One of the first clans to live in Konoha was the Uchiha clan. They were good citizens and shinobi. Surely, they wouldn't attack their own village? Jiraiya pulled out a page from the file Tsunade was looking at and said, "We got this information from a few Anbu at the time. It shows that the Uchiha were acting strangely in their clan district. We also have the papers that Itachi himself gave to the Sandame. Since then, these records have been kept in a safe place that only the Hokage knows about. Itachi told me that the Uchiha were planning a coup." Tsunade nodded. The Sandame tried to deal with the situation in a diplomatic way, but the Uchiha wouldn't budge. Near the time of their planned coup, the Hokage's advisors and Danzo gave the order to kill the clan. The Sandame Hokage agreed, and Itachi was given the job. After a few moments of stunned silence, Tsunade quickly got a sense of how everyone else felt. The civilians were so shocked that they just stared at her, at Itachi, or blankly into space. The clan heads, on the other hand, were a little on edge when they heard that one of their clans had been planning treason and that their own village had dealt with it in such a harsh way. Tsunade sighed and went on, "Itachi Uchiha agreed to all of this, but only if his younger brother Sasuke was spared. You know most of what happened with the rest of what happened. I do have one question, though, Itachi." Itachi looked up as Tsunade went on. "How did you kill your whole clan all by yourself? I know you are a genius, but even someone as skilled as you should have had trouble fighting that many skilled shinobi." Itachi nodded and said, "Yes, you were right, Hokage-sama. In reality, I had help from outside. In a way, it was related to a mission Jiraiya-sama had given me. Shortly before my mission, a man in an orange spiral mask came up to me. He said he was Madara Uchiha, one of the people who helped start the Uchiha clan. I didn't believe him until he told me about the fight with the Shodai Hokage from his own point of view. He also told me how powerful my clan's bloodline was. Madara came up to me and said she would help me get rid of the clan. Since the clan had betrayed him after Konoha was made, he had a grudge against them. He was the person who helped me kill my clan. After that, I went with him and joined Akatsuki, a group that he had started. Since then, I've been watching the group and telling Jiraiya-sama what I find." Shibi finally spoke after a few moments of silence. If you were a spy for Akatsuki, why did you give up that job and mission? He asked. Itachi looked at him and said, my time as a spy was almost over, whether Pain was able to catch Naruto or not. Almost as soon as I joined Akatsuki, Madara knew what I wanted to do. He kept letting me send Jiraiya information because he didn't think I was a threat. He was right, to be honest. The S-ranked criminals in Akatsuki were all stronger than most of the Junin in the elemental nations. Some of these people were even stronger than the Sannin. Konoha couldn't attack the group, and the villages would never work together to fight them. But now Akatsuki is weak. Madara, Zetsu from Kusa, and Kisame Hoshigaki from Kiri are the only ones left. Most likely, he will run away. And he probably wouldn't let me send information about where he is now hiding. So, I thought I should go back to Konoha and help Naruto in his fight against Pain, he said as a conclusion. Tsunade looked at each council member and said, as you can see, we have a problem. The bingo book says that Itachi Uchiha is a criminal, and we now have him in custody. People will call for him to be punished. But if we say that Itachi has always been a loyal shinobi of Konoha, we would have to say the same thing about the Uchiha clan. It could cause trouble in the village, which is the last thing we need since we are at war. Sume stood up and said, Hokage-sama, I can't speak for anyone else here, but I know I speak for the whole Inuzuka clan when I say we should tell the truth. If what you say is true, Itachi has done more for this village than any other shinobi would be expected to do. I, for one, won't give that kind of loyalty a death sentence. This is difficult, but I agree with Inuzuka-san. I couldn't live knowing that we killed Itachi-san twice for the village. Shikaku said, even more so to protect a clan of traitors, and Inoichi and Shuza agreed with him. Next, Shibi spoke up. My fellow clan heads make some good points, but I don't see why the truth should be told right now. I think that Itachi-san should be locked up until the war is over. Then we'll be able to tell the truth and deal with the consequences. The Aburame and the Hyuga clan are on the same page. We shouldn't kill Uchiha-san for being loyal, but we also shouldn't make trouble in our village when we need to stick together. It will only lead to trouble, Hiyashi said. Tsunade turned to the people on the civilian council and asked, what do you think? She queried. The civilian council members looked at each other before one finally spoke. Hokage-sama, we honestly don't know what to think or suggest here. All of this is so strange. To be honest, we think it's best to leave this to you to handle as you see fit. Tsunade looked at her two old advisors, Kaharu and Homura. To be honest, I don't think I care what either of you thinks about this, she said. If the truth comes out, it will be known that you ordered the death of the whole Uchiha clan, not just the bad ones. That includes the wives and children of clan members who were not shinobi. We did what we had to do to protect Konoha, Hamaru said. We will not apologize for that. Tsunade just looked at Itachi and turned away. Itachi Uchiha, she said. I've decided that you will stay in the Uchiha clan district until the village is better able to handle knowing the truth. You will still have to wear seals that block your chakra, and Anbu will keep an eye on you at all times. Itachi bowed his head and said, I don't deserve your kindness or praise here today, Hokage-sama. Thank you, he said in a soft voice. Tsunade just nodded and said, if that's all, I'll call this meeting over. They all left. As the clan leaders, civilians, and temporary prisoners left, Tsunade turned to Jiraiya from her chair and asked, how will you now keep track of Akatsuki? Madara stole Sasuke from under our noses. And they probably aren't still hiding in AIM. Jiraiya nodded. I know. Itachi was very right, even though I wish he wasn't. I'll let my spies know who aren't already working in Iwa. I hope one of them meets someone. Tsunade nodded and said, get going. In the meantime, I have to do some research. I'm sure I've already seen Itachi sick. If I remembered where, I might be able to help him. Jiraiya smiled and said, I'm sure you can do it, Haim, and then he was gone. Tsunade just smiled as he left. She whispered, flatter, and then she left. She was sick and had to find a way to get better. Naruto had to rest for at least 3 days after the fight with Pain. Even with help from Naruto, Hinata, and Tsunade, Anixia had to heal for 2 weeks before she was fully better. She had just been given permission to fly that morning, and she was testing her wings by slowly spreading them out. As he watched, Naruto smiled. He asked, how do you feel? He looked at Onyxia. Better, much better, little one. Let's see if I can fly now. Naruto nodded. Just watch out, all right? The black dragon nodded and moved her wings slowly. Soon, she took off into the sky, moving slowly at first. She went around the hospital on a wheelchair a few times before landing, lightly panting. She didn't sound happy at all as she grumbled, I got tired way too quickly. Naruto stroked her side. You'll be fine. You just need to work on getting your stamina back up, he told her as he rubbed her side. She grumbled lovingly as they started to walk back home. She said, without looking at Naruto, I guess you're right, but I do like spending time with Azuren. Naruto gave a big grin at that. Azuren had Onyxia's side the whole time she was getting better. He had talked to her, made her feel better, and brought her food. Naruto could tell that they were getting closer. Almost there. Through his connection to Onyxia, he could tell that she liked the blue dragon more and more. Kyuubi could also tell that they were getting closer. Something that she liked to tease Onyxia about. Onyxia and Azuren are sitting in a tree and kissing. First comes love, then mating, then incubating eggs. Onyxia growled. She yelled, quiet, you fuzz face. Kyuubi couldn't stop laughing at that. Naruto gave a soft chuckle. Ah, it's just harmless teasing, he said with a smile. Onyxia gave him a golden eye. Oh, and what about all those dreams and thoughts about Hinata you've been having? Naruto blushed, looking away. When he thought about Hinata, he has had strange feelings ever since he woke up and saw her half asleep on her bed. When he went to sleep, he would dream that they were walking, holding hands, or having a picnic together. When they got to the Namikaze estate and went inside, Onyxia laughed in a deep, low voice. Onyxia went to where Azuren was in the backyard, while Naruto went inside to think. But he stopped when he saw Anko sitting on the steps in front of the house. She was on her hands and knees with her face between them. When he got close, she looked up with red eyes and tears running down her face. He went over and got on his knees next to her. Anko-san, what's wrong? He asked. Before looking down, Anko looked at him. She said, I've messed things up with Iruka. Naruto blinked his eyes in surprise. What exactly do you mean? Anko cried a little bit before she started to talk. Flashback. As they walked, Anko smiled and put her arm around Iruka's. Oh, Iruka-kun, what are you up to? She asked. She was wearing a purple dress that fit close to her body. It had a deep neckline and a small back, and the straps were tied around her neck. Iruka was wearing a button-down shirt, slacks, and a jacket. He gave Anko a soft smile. It's a surprise, he said as they walked into a nice restaurant. After 20 minutes, they sat down and started eating their appetizers. As they walked to their main courses, they made small talk. When that happened, Iruka started acting like she was scared. When she saw him move around, Anko blinked. Iruka-kun? You okay? She asked. Iruka groaned. He said, I want to talk to you about something. We've been together for the past few years, and it's been the best time of my life. I love being with you, hearing you talk and laugh, seeing you smile, and watching you sleep next to me. I love you, Anko. Anko blushed, smiling at him. I feel the same way about you, Iruka. I've had so much fun with you, it's crazy. Iruka nodded. And that's why I want to spend the rest of my life with you, he said as he slowly pulled out a box and opened it. Anko Mitarashi? Will you marry me? When Anko looked at the ring in the box, her eyes got very big. Then she turned and looked at him. She asked, what? Iruka blinked. He asked again, will you marry me? Anko looked at him, then at the ring. She asked, you want to marry me? He gave a worried, confused nod. He asked Anko, is there something wrong?
Yes, I do. Anko bit her lip. It's just that we have a lot of fun together, playing around and dating.
If we get married, it will just add a lot of responsibility to our relationship, won't it? Iruka gave a soft nod. It would, but the fun wouldn't have to end.
It would just mean that we were husband and wife and would spend the rest of our lives together. Anko looked away. She said quietly, I'm sorry, Haruka, but I don't want to get married. I don't think we need to do it. What if things get bad between us and we have to go through the trouble of a divorce? Haruka sat back. He asked, do you think we'd get divorced? Anko turned her head no. No, but what if it did happen? Wouldn't it be better to just stay where we are? Haruka looked at her like he didn't know what to say. Anko, what do you think will happen with us? She gave a head shake. Why does it have to go anywhere? Why can't it just stay here, where it's fun and there are no worries? Haruka just looked down. If that's what you want, he said softly as he put the ring away. Anko could not help but see tears in his eyes. After that, they didn't talk anymore.
Haruka got the bill, paid it, and they walked to Anko's apartment. Anko turned to him at her door. She asked slowly, would you like to come in? When Haruka shook his head, she felt her heart break a little. He kissed her on the cheek and said, I have a busy day tomorrow, so I need to get up early. Good night, Anko. Anko shuddered a bit. Gee, good night, Haruka-kun. I love you, she said. Haruka just nodded as he left. End of flashback. That was over a week ago. Since then, things have been getting worse. He doesn't spend much time with me, and when he does, it's tense. Please, Naruto, I need your help, Anko practically begged him. Naruto sat back, sighing. He looked at her and asked, why didn't you want to marry him? Anko looked down. I don't know. I really do love him, but when I saw that ring and heard him ask me to marry him, I was scared. I never thought he would ask me to marry him, and I never thought I would be married. I panicked. As she sobbed, Naruto put a gentle hand on her shoulder. Everything I feel for Haruka scares me. He's gotten closer to me than anyone else has, at least since my old sensei betrayed me. Naruto nodded. He asked, and you don't want to leave your comfort zone? If you get that close to him, you're afraid of getting hurt again, right? Anko looked down. I don't want to lose him. I really, truly love him. Naruto turned his head away for a while. Then you should tell him the truth, Anko. You should tell him how you really feel. If he understands, he might be able to help you get over your fears. As she looked down, Anko bit her lip. She thought for a while and then got up. I have something that I need to do. Naruto nodded. I understand, Anko. Anko ran away and went to Haruka's apartment. Haruka looked at a picture of him and Anko and let out a quiet sigh. He was carrying Anko on his back while he smiled and ate some dango. As he carried her on his back, he was smiling. He looked at the ring box slowly. Perhaps I was going too fast. Before I asked her to marry me, I should have talked to her more. When someone knocked on the door, he looked up. He got up slowly and answered it. When he saw Anko there, his eyes grew big. She put her hand over his mouth before he could say anything, then walked inside. She shut and locked the door, and then she gave him a deep kiss. Haruka's eyes got even bigger, and she took a step back. Haruka, I need to talk to you. Please wait until I'm done to say anything. Anko led Haruka to the couch and sat down, pulling him down with her. Haruka just nodded quietly. She said softly, Haruka, I wanted to tell you why I didn't say yes to getting married to you. I was scared, Haruka. I'm scared of these feelings I have for you, feelings I haven't had for anyone in a long time, she said nervously, clenching her hands. Haruka watched her as she turned away and started walking faster. After my sensei betrayed me, I shut myself away behind a sarcastic and cruel attitude. I didn't want to be hurt again by anyone, but somehow, you got through my defenses, she said.
For the first time in years, I felt myself opening up to someone, and it made me happy. But when you asked me to marry you, I realized that if I said yes, it would mean I trusted you with everything, and that scared me. I didn't know if I was ready to trust someone that deeply again.
She turned to him and sat back down, taking his hands and staring at them. But when I saw how much what I said hurt you, and when I saw how bad things were without you, I decided I didn't want to be afraid anymore." She looked him in the eyes. "I don't know if I'm ready to get married yet, but I do know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Iruka shook a little bit as he pulled her in for a kiss. Anko put her arms around him and kissed him deeply while he held her close. They talked about how much they loved each other for a few minutes. When they finally had to stop to get some air, they were both heavy breathing. Iruka smiled at her, and she smiled back. Then she moved closer to him and nuzzled him. "I love you, Iruka-kun." He whispered, with a smile, "I love you, too, Anko-chan, now and always." The couple who got back together stayed together for a while, enjoying being close again. Hokage Tower. As she looked through one of her medical books, Tsunade sighed. When she wasn't helping Anixia get better or taking care of village business, she was looking through her records of illnesses and diseases for Itachi's disease. It was time for Konoha to pay Itachi back for all he had done for them. She turned a page in her textbook, then stopped and widened her eyes. That's it. It was in her hands. She quickly looked over the disease to see if there was a way to treat it. But when she did find it, her eyes got a little wider. She put the book down and thought about what she had just read. Then she got up and left her office. As she left the tower, a pair of anbu fell into place behind her. After 10 minutes, she walked through the gate into the Uchiha district and headed toward the house Itachi had taken for himself. Itachi didn't want to live in his old house anymore, so he chose to move in with another Uchiha family. Tsunade went to the door, knocked, and waited patiently for someone to answer. Itachi opened the door after a few minutes. "This is a surprise, Hokage-sama," Itachi said as he opened the door for her and her two anbu. Tsunade nodded. "I know, Itachi, but I have to talk to you about something very important," she said, pointing to her book. "I not only know what's wrong with you, but I also know how to fix it," she said. Itachi had been pouring them both tea when he stopped and stood still. He put the teapot down slowly and looked at her. He asked in a quiet voice, "You have?" She nodded. "Yes, I have. But the procedure isn't risk-free. It requires some precise surgery and some medicines that need to be made fresh. If they're not made right, they could kill you, and so could the surgery. Overall, I'd say we have a 70% chance of success," she said quietly. Itachi sat down slowly. He didn't say anything for a while. He finally turned his eyes to Tsunade. "Hokage-sama," he said quietly, "I'm not sure if it would be worth it. I honestly don't see why I should keep living, and I'm not even sure I want to. I killed my clansmen. Not just the ones who were plotting against Konoha, but also the ones who were innocent and had no idea what was going to happen. I don't think someone like me deserves a second chance at life." Tsunade felt bad for him and gave a quiet nod. "I can't understand the pain and emotions you're feeling, Itachi, and I can't argue against what you want. But you could honor those innocent people you killed, those who were innocent of your clan's treachery. Honor them by making the Uchiha clan one that is worthy of them." She slowly stood up. As she left, she said, "If you do want to move forward, let me know in 3 days, and I'll handle the procedure myself." Itachi sat still in the house, which was empty. As he did it, he thought about the family who had lived here before. Who was it that lived in this house? Was it an old couple whose kids had grown up and moved away? A family with children who had laughed and played in this room? A new couple who want to start their own family? Itachi didn't know because all of his personal things had been taken away by him after the clan lost. Itachi slowly got up and walked to the window, where he looked out at the empty district. Was he able to do what Tsunade asked? Rebuild his clan and make it better than before? He didn't know how to answer that question right now. But he had to answer the question. He went to the backyard slowly to think. Not known where. Madara was happy to see that Sasuke kept training because he wanted to get stronger after being in prison for so long. Madara understood this, so he had Kisame train with Sasuke. So far, the Kiribiju without a tail was winning, just like he had done in every other match. But it was clear that Sasuke was slowly getting better against Kisame. He walked away and started to think about what was going on. Since he left Konoha and left the Shodai Hokage at the Valley of the End, he had been working toward his ultimate goal of ruling the world. He had quietly increased his power over dozens of groups and governments all over the world. With a word here and a push there, he helped start a number of fights that divided the world and made it easier for his plans to come to fruition. He helped start the old hatred between Iwa and Konoha by making it look like Konoha Shinobi had killed the son of the Shodai Tsuchikage without a good reason. He also made Kumo want the bloodlines and powerful shinobi of other villages, and their bloodline purge almost destroyed Kiri. The Fourth Shinobi War, on the other hand, was his best work to date. When the Kyuubi Jinchuriki went missing, he was worried, but he also saw it as a chance to destroy Konoha and grab as many Jinchuriki as he could during the chaos. And then he showed up. The rider of the demon dragon. He had killed Kakuzu and Hidan and stopped the Nibi Jinchuriki from being taken. Then he joined Konoha, which changed the course of the battle. Even worse was when he found out that the same demon dragon rider was Konoha's Jinchuriki and held the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Now the war was almost over. With the help of their allies, Konoha put Iwa on the defense. Kumo and Suna still had their Jinchuriki, and he had lost his most powerful one. Itachi's evil actions had caused Pain to die, and his Rinnegan eyes died with him. Madara knew he couldn't do anything else. He would have to go deep underground until he was ready to attack his enemies. After taking their Jinchuriki, he knew he couldn't join forces with Iwa. And Kabuto, his only other possible ally, was dead. Madara turned away. "Soon, I will take my rightful place as ruler of this world," he said as he looked at Sasuke. "And I'll use you as a pawn to get what I want." 3 days later, at the Hokage's office. When Naruto and Hinata walked in, Tsunade looked up. "I have a mission for you too," she said. "Iwa hasn't moved against us since the failed attack on Suna. Other than small raids and skirmishes, their forces have been completely defensive. I want you two to sneak behind their lines and try to figure out what's going on, like if they expect us to attack or are preparing for a ceasefire, etc." Naruto nodded. "Right. How long should the mission be?" Tsunade sat back. 2 weeks. Any longer and you risk being found out. There's a small village about 10 miles behind Iwa lines where some of the force commanders live. That should be your main source of information, she said, showing them where the village was on a map. A team that was on a mission in the area before the war started and had to hide there said that there was also a cave nearby. If it's not being used, you might be able to stay there. Naruto and Hinata nodded as they took notes on the information and map Tsunade gave them. Are there any side goals? Naruto asked. Tsunade nodded. There will be a supply caravan going through the area to bring supplies to their northern force. If you can, try to stop it. Right, they agreed. In an hour, we'll leave, Naruto said with a bow. Just as the two of them left the room, Itachi walked in. Tsunade looked up. Itachi-san? She queried. Itachi gave her a bow and said, Hokage-sama. I've made up my mind, he said softly. I want to go through the procedure to get better. Tsunade nodded softly and said, I'll start making plans right away, Itachi. But, as I said, this procedure could kill you. You might want to make a will and make sure all your affairs are in order. Thank you, Hokage-sama, Itachi said with a nod. I'll take care of it right away. Tsunade said, I think I'll need about a week to get ready. When everything is ready, I'll let you know, she said. Itachi bowed and left. His Anbu guards took him back to the Uchiha compound quietly. Once he got there, Itachi sat down quietly and looked at the paper in front of him. He thought about what he wanted to write before slowly starting to write, the only sound being the almost silent whisper of his brush on the paper. Naruto and Hinata were getting ready for their mission somewhere else. Neither of them was taking their armor because the mission required stealth and subtlety, not brute force. Kushina and Tayuya met them in the backyard where their dragons were waiting. Kushina gave Naruto a hug and said, Watch out there. She said softly, You'll be in the middle of the enemy's territory. Naruto smiled. Don't worry, Mom, I'll be fine, he told her as he kissed her on the cheek. He also gave his sister a hug, which made Tayuya give him a rough farewell. He climbed into the saddle of Onyxia and patted the horse's neck, looking at Hinata to make sure she was ready. Let's ride. He said this as the two dragons spread their wings and flew away. People on the ground and shinobi alike looked up to see the two dragon riders fly away. Seeing them go out over the wall gave them courage and hope. Hinata was up high and deep in thought. The man flying on his own dragon not too far ahead of her was on her mind. When she heard that Naruto had died, she went from being shocked to being sad and depressed. Then she locked away her feelings, thinking she was done with them for good. When she found out that Naruto was still alive, her feelings came back with a vengeance. When she saw him with the fire daimyo, she felt shocked, angry, confused, and happy. As she talked to him and found out why he did what he did, her anger melted away and was slowly replaced by happiness that he was alive again. When she became a dragon rider, too, they became close friends. Hinata felt things she hadn't felt in a long time. When she saw him lying in the hospital, she felt more fear than when a friend went missing. When he woke up, she felt joy she hadn't felt since she was a genin. And now, as she watched him, she felt a tightness in her heart, the same tightness she felt when she was a shy genin watching Naruto in silence. The female rider was trying to figure out if these feelings she was having were real or if she was falling for Naruto all over again. This was what had her so worried. She let out a quiet sigh and looked down at the ground. What do I feel for him? Is it just a crush, or am I really falling for him? You can tell me what you're thinking, Azurin said in her mind. Hinata looked at her dragon and smiled. Azurin, you know how I feel and what I'm thinking. What do you think? She asked as she held on to him. I think that the way you felt about Naruto never went away. Since we've talked about it, I'm actually surprised it's taken them this long to come back. Azurin said, I think the way you feel about him goes beyond just liking him. He did this by tilting his head slightly to look back at her. Hinata just softly sighed as she thought about it. The sad truth was that Naruto was the only man she could really be with. Being a dragon rider, Naruto had told her, was the same as being immortal. She would never really die of old age, as far as he knew, but any man she fell in love with would, as would any children they had. Hinata didn't want a relationship based on circumstances. She didn't want to be with Naruto just because he was the only man she could be with. She wanted to be with him because she really loved him. That's why she was worried about her feelings. She wanted to know if they were real love or just fleeting affection. She quietly shook her head, unable to decide. For now, she would put those thoughts out of her mind. She and Naruto had a mission to complete, so she steeled herself for the task ahead. Konoha Hospital, 1 week later. Konan sat in her hospital bed in the security wing of the hospital. She had found it strange that she hadn't been moved to a prison cell after she was done healing, or that she had been taken to an interrogation room when some of their interrogators came in to question her. Then again, they didn't ask her very many questions. They had asked her where Akatsuki outposts were and if there were any other members besides those who were already known to be dead or alive. She turned to look out the window at the village. A small part of her hated this village, because Konoha Ninja had killed Nagato's family and helped Hanzo the Salamander kill her friend and teammate Yahiko. But a small part of her was also jealous. From her window, she could see the people of Konoha walking around the streets. They looked happy and almost didn't seem to care that their village was at war. Even when Pain was in charge, the people of AIM were always on edge. Most people didn't leave their homes or places of work very often, leaving the streets empty except for Shinobi. Konan wanted to say that this village had never been hurt, which was why they were happy, but she knew that would be a lie. 18 years ago, the Kyuubi attacked Konoha, and 5 years ago, Suna and Ado attacked together. They may not have understood the hardships of AIM and Kiri's civil wars, but they did know the pain that came from things like that. She quietly looked down at her bed. She was bored and lonely because no one talked to her except the interrogators. The raven-haired Kunoichi would check on her sometimes, and an Ambu would bring her food, but no one else came to see her, and she wasn't allowed to go outside. She was still angry at Itachi for betraying her, but she missed their conversations. If she was honest, she had come to care for Itachi, maybe like she had cared for Yahiko or Nagato before he became Pain. But the part of her that was angry at him for being a spy for Konoha crushed that part of her heart. She looked up when the door opened and a Junin with raven hair, whose name she thought was Shizune, walked in. Shizune went into the room and locked the door before turning to Konan. I have something for you, she said, holding up a scroll. She brought it over and gave it to him. Konan looked at the scroll with interest and slowly opened it. Inside, she found a folded piece of paper and a document written on the scroll. She set the folded paper aside quietly and started to read the document on the scroll. I, Itachi Uchiha, declare this to be my last will and testament, as I am in good health and mind. If I die or end up in a coma from which I can't wake up, I declare the following. 1. That Konan, a former Kunoichi of the Akatsuki, should get the house of the clan head of the Uchiha clan. That she should keep it unless she wants to sell it or throw it away. 2. The rest of the Uchiha district should be given to the village of Konoha, and the Hokage should decide what to do with it. 3. All of the Uchiha clan's jutsu and techniques, except those involving the Sharingan Kekai Genkai, will belong to the Konoha shinobi forces, and the Hokage can do whatever he or she wants with them. 4. All written and recorded information about the Sharingan Kekai Genkai will belong to the Hokage of Konoha and can be kept or thrown away as the Hokage sees fit. 5. That a quarter of the money owned by the Uchiha family be given to Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze as payment for the pain I caused to her son, either directly or through my brother Sasuke Uchiha. 6. That half of the Uchiha's money be put into Konohagakure no Sato's finances, which the Hokage can run however he or she wants. 7. That a quarter of the Uchiha's money be put in a bank account that only Konan, the former kunoichi of Akatsuki, can access. She may be the only one who can get to it. If any part of my will is ignored or broken, I want all of the Uchiha clan's properties, possessions, and money to go straight to Konan, the former kunoichi of Akatsuki, so that she can do with them as she sees fit. This is the last thing I want to say. Itachi Uchiha. Before looking up at Shizune, Konan just looked at the scroll. She whispered, what? What is this? Shizune gave a sigh. Itachi-san is about to go through a procedure that will cure him of an illness. However, the procedure has a chance of killing him, so Hokage-sama suggested he write a will first. This is one copy of that will. Another copy was hidden in a safe place, and a third was filed with the Hokage's office. As Konan looked at the scroll, she shook a little. Slowly, her eyes moved to the folded piece of paper, and she started to slowly unfold it. She slowly started to read what was inside. Konan, since you were reading this letter, you have already seen my will. If not, read it after you finish this letter. If you haven't heard, I'm about to die from an illness I've had for a long time. Maybe I was born with it. I don't know. Hokage-sama has found a way to save me, but it's not risk-free. I wrote that will so that my clan's property wouldn't go to a greedy civilian. I wanted it to go to the people who could use it the most. If you're worried about what I left you in my will, don't worry about claiming it. I've talked to the Hokage about it, and she has agreed to let you go. You can become a citizen of Konoha, or you can leave this village for good. She said she will make it official in a week. Konan, I want to tell you the truth about what I did and how I treated you. Yes, I did betray you because I was a spy for Konoha. I told my village what Akatsuki was doing and where they were going. I will not deny it. But I never thought about using you to get more information. When it came to you, that thought was probably the last thing on my mind. I don't know how it happened, but when I first saw you, I felt like my heart had stopped. I felt like I was frozen to the ground, held there by some genjutsu. At the time, I didn't know what I was feeling. As an Ambu operative and captain, I had spent most of my life hiding my emotions, so when I did feel something, it felt strange. I cared about you, Konan. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's the best way I can think of to describe how I felt at the time. As time went on and I learned more about you, my feelings for you grew. I could see an overwhelming sadness hidden beneath a calm, almost cold exterior. I felt my heart break, wishing I could make you smile, wishing I could hear you laugh. When pain turned on you after Naruto-sensei saved the Ichibi Jinchuriki, my heart went out to you. When I came up to you, it was only to try to ease your pain and sadness. I had no plans to use you to find out more about Akatsuki. The fact that we've spent time together, talked, and told each other about our lives over the past few months has only confirmed what I already thought, that my feelings for you were love. I fell in love with you, Konan. Now, though, it doesn't matter. I've broken the bond we had. I've broken your trust and friendship. And for that, I am truly and forever sorry. I don't ask for forgiveness, because I don't deserve it. If I survive the procedure I'm about to have, I won't bother you again, Konan. I just wanted to thank you for your friendship and say how sorry I am for breaking it. I hope you have a peaceful and happy life, Konan, whether you stay in Konoha or go out into the world. I also hope you find a man who is worthy of your love. Sincerely, Uchiha Itachi. As Konan read the letter, she shook and looked up at Shizune. Where is he? She asked. She shook and asked. Shizune looked at the kunoichi, who was shaking, and saw the turmoil in her eyes. I'm sorry. He is at his estate right now getting ready for tomorrow. Then, they will start the process. Right now, he needs to sleep. Konan tried to keep her emotions in check as she shook. Please, I need to see him. We should talk to him," she said as she struggled to get out of bed. "I'm sorry, but you can't," said Shizune to stop her. "He needs to get some sleep before tomorrow. The stronger he is, the more likely it is that he will live." Conan stopped struggling and fell into the bed, trembling as tears threatened to come out of her eyes. "DD damn him," she whispered, trying to control her emotions. Shizune put a soft hand on her shoulder and said, "If he makes it through the procedure, you can see him then." Conan looked down and whispered, "It might be too late by then," before breaking into quiet sobs. She buried her face in her pillow and sobbed quietly as Shizune tried to comfort the crying woman. Hidden cave, behind Iwa lines. Naruto grunted as he finished making a fire while he waited for Hinata. Suande had told them to keep spying behind enemy lines to see what was going on. Onyxia and Azurin flew them high enough above Iwa's lines to avoid being seen. They then landed in an isolated area and left their riders behind, since they wouldn't be able to hide as well. The two dragons were now behind Konoha lines, but one of them would fly over to their position every so often to talk to them. Hinata and Naruto had been taking turns spying on the town. They had used a combination of magic and makeup to hide themselves while they got a feel for the town's layout. It was a medium-sized town, with maybe 10,000 people.
On the second day of spying, they found out that the Iowa commanders were staying in a large hotel in the middle of the city. After 2 more days of figuring out their schedules, guard rotations, and other things, Naruto and Hinata felt comfortable enough to sneak into the commander's room and look at any papers or documents they had there. Overall, the information they got from infiltrating and what they heard from the shinobi commanders led them to the same conclusion: Iowa was almost done with the war. The Tsuchikage told his forces to stay on the defensive, and the top shinobi were called back to Iowa to talk about what was going on. Even though this seemed like enough information to go back to Konoha, Naruto thought they should stay in case something unexpected happened. Naruto looked up when he heard thunder in the distance. He was a little worried when he saw dark storm clouds gathering in the slowly fading light. Hinata would be back soon, but the storm might hit before she did. Naruto bit his lip as he thought about Hinata. Over the past week, she had been going out on her turns to spy on the Iowa shinobi, which made him more and more worried. Hinata was a well-known Junin of Konoha, and most of the shinobi who fought her died or were crippled for life. Hinata had won the match and ended it by ending his career as a shinobi for good. Iowa couldn't do anything at the time, but they used the bingo book to make Hinata a target. But if Naruto was completely honest with himself, he knew that his worry went beyond that of a friend for a friend or a teammate for a teammate. He had only recently admitted to himself that he felt more for Hinata than just friendship. He agreed that she was very pretty, with her pale skin, lavender-colored eyes, and long, indigo-blue hair. She also had a great body. But when they met again, when he joined Konoha, he was turned off by her cold, dark personality. She was cruel and almost bloodthirsty toward her enemies, and she was cold and uncaring toward her allies. Now, though, she was different. In the months since he had told her who he was and they had started training together, she had changed. She was still confident and could be cruel to her enemies if she had to, but he was starting to see some of the old Hinata come back. She was kinder and gentler. She laughed and smiled. And what a smile! When Naruto thought about it, it made his heart beat faster and his face get a little red. Naruto didn't know when he started to feel this way about Hinata. He had trained with her for over half a year and taught her how to be a dragon rider. Was it when he comforted her after the invasion of Odo, or when he woke up in the hospital and saw her sleeping? Naruto didn't have an answer. All he knew was that he was thinking about Hinata in a different way, but he wasn't sure if he wanted to say anything to her yet. Naruto knew that Hinata was probably the only woman he could ever have a serious relationship with. Because of his long lifespan, any woman he cared about would age and die long before he did. But Hinata, being a rider, wouldn't. She would age just as slowly as he did. But Naruto didn't want a relationship based on that fact alone. He wanted a relationship based on mutual feelings of affection. As he thought about it, he finally decided to ask Hinata a few questions to see if her answers could help him decide what to do. He looked up as the weather got worse and the first raindrops fell. 10 minutes later, it was pouring rain outside. Naruto became worried and was about to go look for Hinata when one of the shadow clone sentries he had set up broke apart and sent him a message: Hinata was coming in. Within a few minutes, Hinata ran into the cave, drenched. She shook herself to get rid of the water. "It's really pouring out there," she said with a bit of a chill. Naruto took one of the extra blankets they had and gave it to her. She smiled and thanked him, then went deeper into the cave to dry off and change. Naruto blushed a little at the thought and turned to face outwards to make sure he was alone. He started making dinner to keep himself busy. Soon, Hinata came back and put her wet clothes in the blanket, which was now a little damp, next to the fire to dry. Naruto looked up at her and asked, "Anything new to report?" He asked. "More of the same," she shook her head. The only people the Iowa commanders sent to the front lines were a few messengers. Iowa hasn't been busy and hasn't sent any new messages. I think it's likely that they'll call for a meeting soon. Let's wait a few more days, just to be sure, said Naruto. After that, the two were quiet as they listened to the fire roar and the storm outside. Finally, Naruto spoke up. "May I ask you a question?" When she gave him a blank look, he asked, "Have you ever thought about, well, dating someone?" He asked. Hinata's eyes widened a bit before she looked into the fire. "I thought about what it would be like to date you up until you disappeared," she said. "But after you left, I stopped thinking about relationships. I worked hard to become the best shinobi I could. At least, that's what I think a shinobi should be like." Naruto tilted his head a little as she went on. "But," she said, "I haven't really thought about dating anyone. I've been busy training with Azurin and you, and I'm also going to age very slowly," she said softly. "I don't see why I should try dating if it won't lead anywhere." I see," Naruto said in a sad voice as he turned away. "Why did you bring it up?" Hinata asked. She queried. "No reason," Naruto shook his head. "Don't worry about it," he said as he waved his hand, turned away, and went back to tending the fire. Hinata tilted her head a bit, wanting to know more. "Come on, tell me," she said. Naruto gave a dry laugh and said, "I'm not so sure I can." Hinata moved closer to him and asked, "Why, have you ever thought about dating?" Naruto bit his lip and said, "I've been thinking about it, but I'm not sure if I should do anything. There are some things that make it hard." She looked down a little bit, sad.
Who is it?" she asked. "Is it Sakura?" "No," Naruto said, shaking his head. "Don't forget that I have the same problem as you," he said. But then, she blinked. "Who would you be?" Her eyes got bigger as she realized what had happened. Naruto just got up and said, "Guess you figured it out," as he went to the entrance of the cave to watch the rain. "You. Have you been thinking about going out with me?" she queried. The blonde rider just nodded quietly. You've been on my mind since I woke up in the hospital," he said. "I keep thinking about you. But I wasn't sure if that was how you felt. And I didn't want us to date because we're both dragon riders or something. I wanted it to be like that because we both wanted to do it. So I didn't say anything until I found out if you were serious about dating me." Hinata got a little red in the face. "Why wouldn't I?" she asked as she stood up. Naruto looked at her and said, "I didn't want to assume that you still felt the same way about me after all these years." He said, I don't know." Hinata walked over and gently took one of his hands. They were both blushing heavily as they stood there, with the open cave mouth framing them. She looked up at him quietly and said, Thank you, Naruto, for not assuming that I still felt the same way about you as I used to. I wasn't sure how I felt about you anymore, to be honest. I have been trying to figure out exactly what they are. I think I'd like to go on a date with you, Naruto," she said with a smile. "I'd like to see where things go from there." Naruto smiled and asked, "Really?" Well, that's fine. We'll go on a date when we get back to Konoha," he said with a smile. "My pleasure. Ichiraku ramen won't be it." She smiled and laughed. "I wouldn't mind that," she said. Naruto just smiled, but a loud crash of thunder made him jump. Hinata also jumped a little, and they both giggled nervously. "I should get back to the food," Naruto said, moving back to the fire. Hinata, on the other hand, just started sorting through their gear. Neither of them could hide the big smiles on their faces, though, because they both thought the same thing, yes.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.